What do skeletons bring to potlucks? Spare ribs. What's going on, YouTube? Today we've got a special video. We are going to talk about one of the rarest, if not the rarest item in the game, but also one that almost has, I would say, unlimited value. But why does it have unlimited value? Because it comes from something that people don't generally farm, and those of you who do might not know that you're getting something that is very limited to the people that have ever had one ever. You may know what I'm talking about based on the thumbnail. You may not, but let's jump into it. And this is kind of a continuation of the video that you see at the top here of an item that was listed for 990 million. Well, what if I told you that this item is not only probably worth more, but it's not going to go down in value regardless of how many people know about it, versus this item was actually farmed and successfully gotten by quite a few of you. Now, I'd love to actually see a lot of you get this item, but we got to talk about the item. And here it is, the most valuable item in the game. Do you feel it? Do you feel the razzle dazzle of it? Do you go, oh? It is the Chef Arquitius Lost Thesis. Did I mispronounce that? Of course, probably. It's part of my MO as a content creator. What does it do? When you have a 100% AVA skill boosting recipe scroll in your inventory, use that to transform that recipe into a 100% AVA skill booster recipe scroll. That's all it does. Most valuable item in the game. You might be wondering, but there's XP versions of this that are worth 99% less. Why is this worth so much? You might be wondering. And the answer is actually relatively simple. While even items like the Vardenfell 6th banner might drop from very niche and type locations, the Chef's Lost Thesis drops only from battlegrounds. Only from battlegrounds. And that's all people know, except that there's only ever been a handful of people that have successfully gotten it. And I've really never even seen anybody list 100% recipes, like the actual made recipe. You know, I've not even seen the torts that is made from this even being sold by anybody on console. I have seen this item sell once. I have seen it sell one time on console. That's how rare this item is. So how does it work? And all you have to do is just farm those battlegrounds. Now, there's a couple caveats. You have a higher chance, allegedly. Now, mind you, we're working with percentages that are probably so minimalistic, it's ridiculous. You have a higher chance depending on if your team wins, and I believe also depending on how many points you scored towards the objective. So deathmatch, that's really about kills. Dominations, it's taking objectives, you know, blah blah blah, capture the relic, take the relic, you know the drill. You get actual points for doing things that are on the objective, which means you don't just go around killing everybody. You have to play the objective unless it's deathmatch. Kidding. But there's a lot of people that do that, and I always find it kind of interesting. And then they post those photos of them being a werewolf with like 25 kills on a crazy king game where they lost like 500 to 120. So I used to play Battlegrounds every day, which also goes to show that I've completed a lot of Battlegrounds, never seen this item for myself or any of my friends that were in my Battlegrounds groups or anyone that I know of. The only time I've ever seen this being sold was in a trade guild that had this listed for. And really, it's a very interesting item, and let's talk about why people might want it. And here we can see some listings for some war torts. What are these war torts for? Well, they increase your experience gain for your alliance rank and skill line from all sources. Why this is so helpful is because you get skill points when you level up your alliance skill line every so often. Usually every one, or then becomes every other one. And people love skill points. People also want the furnishings that are attached to it. A whole furnishing line that's attached based on how high your alliance skill line is, which is actually a bit of a hidden kind of stat, for example. Most people don't actually know where it is, and I'm going to have to blur out my socials here. Hang on. You can see right at the very bottom below my name, I'm 45. So there's actually this hidden line here for everybody that's might not have seen it. Most of you probably have at some point, but it is something that you do want to level up. I'm actually trying to get to 50, and it requires a ridiculous amount to get to it. And you can even see here, just to even get the base level 50% ones, which is kind of like a 50% XP scroll almost, it's going to cost you about 700 gold each to buy in bulk. And then the 50 additional percent ones, now we're going from 50 to 100%. That's going to run you 100,000 gold each. 100,000 gold each. And then the ones that are listed for that big recipe that we talked about earlier, that are listed, that would give you 150%, they're not even listed. Nobody's even selling them. And you can see how valuable just the 50% scroll is. Somebody's listing it for 750,000 gold, which on console is quite a lot. And here you can see the 100% recipe is selling for 3.5 million, which is a pretty penny if you're looking to buy a recipe. But you can see though that people do sell them. There's actually no 100% listed in here. But you can see that Colovium War Torts are something that has a high frequency of supply. But as you start to get to that 50 and definitely that 150%, you definitely see less and less. In fact, only ever even seen one sell, as I told you, and that was about 1.5 to 2 years ago, and I believe it sold in the range for 60 to 80 million, which when you account for console inflation is ridiculous. I'm going to put it in perspective of something that some of you might not like to hear, but let's just say it sold for 70 million. Back then, 2 years ago, ESO gold on Xbox was worth about $30 if you sold it on some shady website. So just bear with me. I promise we're not advertising anything or that, but that would mean that recipe sold for the equivalent of $2,100 on console. This obviously accounts for, you know, what the actual rates would be for console gold on Xbox and A. And again, we're not condoning gold selling. Please don't shut me down, ZeniMax. But that is the tangible value that you could, in theory, equate to that item based on how much demand there is for shady gold, you know, to be laundered through those illicit systems, and how much supply and demand there was for this recipe. And here you can see it on Tamriel's Trade Center. Recipe, white gold war tort, minimum average 700 million. Now, obviously, this is a listing price. This does not mean that it's worth this much. This does not mean that it's going to sell for this much. But for anyone to pay a listing fee to list this up for 700 million means that they have some level of confidence that that's at least around the value that this item has. And I found a nice little Reddit post here that also kind of outlines this on PlayStation, where he was selling it for 150 million, and he even points out that on PlayStation 150 million gold is enough to buy 2 Godslayer runs for you, which is, I believe, the most valuable trifecta run currently in the game. Now that might change, obviously, you know, as you know, new trials and things come out, pricing is adjusted, but with the value that title has, and again, I'm not condoning that you buy titles and things for, you know, gold and stuff. I'm just pointing it out to give you a value estimate that that's how much that this is. And if you were to take, you know, PlayStation's gold, you know, 150, you know, times probably like $20, I mean, you're still looking at, I would say, a pretty decent penny. It's about $3,000. And obviously, I'm a little embarrassed I couldn't freehand that and I had to look it off to the side. But you really have to consider that that is how much value that this person is inputting into that item. Obviously, I'm not saying you should sell it again for real world money, but that is the level of value that it technically could have in theory. And you can see a little bit as to why, because if you look at the average prices for the made components, the actual war tort itself, on PC, it is averaging at minimum 325,000, maximum 600,000, with an average sell price of 422,000. And the actual recipe ingredients to make this, while they're based in Cyrodiil and they can be a little finicky to get sometimes, they're very cheap to get. So the components of this are relatively cheap. It's really owning the recipe that makes this kind of something that you want to actually get. But it's so hard to get. But once you have it, it's almost like I either have to sell this bad boy, or I have to go out and actually make these, you know, things and start making some profit on it. Which brings up an interesting question. If you were in a situation where you got a recipe that could give you hundreds of thousands of gold every time you crafted the recipe, or you could, in theory, sell the recipe and make tens of millions of gold, but you probably would be in a situation where you would really have to kind of take time to find a buyer, versus if you just started mass producing these bad boys, you could just fill up a guild trader with them and get passive income for forever. What would you do in that situation? I'm actually very curious what you would do. And these items go up crazily in value around mid-year mayhem, which unfortunately doesn't show on this graph because it's too far away. But during mid-year mayhem, White Strakes mayhem, Pelennors, whatever, they always change the naming schemes on it. Once they do those AP events, these things skyrocket. If you think their average is as high now, just wait until an event like that. And I can already hear you guys wondering, Jake, how do I get in the War Tort business just to begin with? I want to get interested. I want to get into it, even if it's just little baby ones. How do we get started? Well, if you want to find yourself one of the rarest recipes in the game, even the 50% one I would consider exceptionally rare. Basically, it explains it at the top here, so feel free to read it, but I'll give you the heads and tails. There's a lot of resource nodes in Cyrodiil. Sometimes they're replaced by a book that's green that looks like that. You pick it up, boom, you got yourself the recipe. That's very straightforward, and you can see all the crafting requirements at the top. Now, to get the recipe for the 100%, similar to the ingredients to make the food itself, the item needed to create the recipe Molten War Tort can be purchased at the General Telvar, General Merchant, and then you can buy the Tort Desertion, which will set you back 500,000 Telvar, and then you combine it with the pre-existing recipe that you had. And then it goes over the recipe that we talked about through all this bad boy. Acquiring the knowledge to make this food is equally demanding. A player must combine one recipe Molten War Tort with a Chief's Aquarius Lost Thesis. This Thesis is a very rare drop following the completion of a battleground with a better chance resulting from your team placing higher on a scoreboard. Combining the two will create the recipe White Gold War Tort. It's very interesting. And you can see that this is a very interesting recipe line all around, and you guys can see the value that is definitely in these bad boys. So if you're interested in farming even the 50% one, go to Cyrodiil, just go pick up some stuff, and you might find yourself a green looking book that could get you a healthy chunk of money. But dear friends, what did you guys think? What would you do in that position where you get an item that is worth hundreds of millions of gold, and you can either make tens of thousands of gold potentially per day in passive income just by listing up some recipes, maybe farming some Telvar, doing some different types of content, but you're going to be able to make a lot of income, or getting that big boy payout? What would you do? It's almost like winning the lottery where they give you a lump sum where you can pick the little payouts throughout time. And another question too is does this interest you to farm this item? There were a lot of you in the comments for the 6th banner that were like going out and farming this item, and a significant number of you commented that you did find it, which is great. Unfortunately, you probably lowered the value of that item just by making a video on it, but I'm pretty confident that we cannot lower the item value of this because of how rare it is. There are people who've run over 2,000 battlegrounds and never seen it. It's almost like looking for a shiny in the wild. So what would you do in the conundrum? Will you guys be farming it? And let me know in the comments below. We're doing our 3 giveaway drawings. All you have to do to enter, if you're interested, is be subscribed. We're actually up to 41% of you are subscribed, so thank you. All you have to do is leave a like on the video. Every like that you give on the video will enter you throughout the month. And the third thing is a random word be flashed upon the screen during one of the videos that we post this month. If you're the first person to notice that word and comment it below, you will win. Thank you guys so much again for watching, and I'll catch you later. Bye, guys.
Better remember to like and subscribe to Jake Clips. Or you should. I might have to pluck your eyes if you don't. Or, better yet, I'll skip rope with your entrails. Do it now. Subscribe. Ta-ta. Off with you.
Thank you guys so much again for sticking around past the end. What we're going to be doing is covering some of the biggest, most valuable items in the game, and then bringing them all together for a list. You know, here are the top 10 most valuable items in ESO. That way there's kind of this list, but also that way we don't have to talk about every single nitty-gritty piece about it, how to get it, the other components required, and the things that we talked about it in this video that we could kind of help skim past a little bit on a general list. And then if you're interested, you can always watch the longer form video because it'll be there and ready for you to watch. So thank you guys again for sticking around. I also wanted to give a shout out to the newest channel members, since you just missed the day where I read all of your names out loud. And that is Shadow Shoe, 419. So thank you guys so much again. Check out yesterday's golden vendor if you want to see one of the best tanking rings in the game in store, and if you want to see a beautiful sarcophagus. Thank you guys, and I'll see you later. Bye.